David Harbour, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man.
We rebooted the studio for today because it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
I know. I see this. You clearly spent tons of time and money.
Oh, yeah.
You did.
Tens of dollars. But I should say
It's very thoughtful, though. It's very thoughtful. Thank you. It is my birthday. Unfortunately, it is my birthday.
Oh, no. Come on. We got you a little something.
Oh, what? No.
Yeah,
oh, my God. Look, it's a bucket.
So this is, you can do your dishes in it later. We want to describe what you see here?
Let's see. Here we got ketchup Lay's potato chips.
Do you know about these?
Simulated flavor. I do not know about these.
These are huge in Canada. These are like Canadian chips, yeah.
Ketchup potato chips. Wow.
They're pretty good, man. I'm not going to lie to you.
All right.
We also got you a shirt from our show.
Okay.
And a mug from our show.
Wow.
So
you guys went all out.
No problem. Yeah, we definitely
how
bought
many
at least
hours
one of those
shopping
things.
did you spend? Because don't lie to me.
Vanessa nearly bought one of those things. So
She nearly bought one. I bet it wasn't the shirt or the mug. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it was a grand total of $1.49. So, all right, I was asked to clear off the table because we need this interview to not look like it's your birthday,
all right.
For posterity's sake.
Yeah, of course.
So if you want to crack open the chips, you're more than welcome. But
it's all right. I'll refrain.
Thanks for being here on your birthday, though. Nothing says a good birthday like doing press.
You are correct.
All I can think is that to take on Hellboy is an incredibly brave thing for an actor to do because this is a character that already has a pretty huge fan base. This character started to appear in comics in the 90s. This isn't the first Hellboy film. What's that like for you?
I mean, initially it was very daunting, as you say, because people have, very strong opinions. But it had been such a long time since they did the last one. I think it's like 11 years since the last Hellboy came out, and I like this character so much, and I kind of wanted to have a life, and I wanted to play him too. I think there's a lot of richness to be explored in the character as well, and a lot of different ways to go with it. And I think when they pitched me this thing about it being more of a horror-based Hellboy, more of brutal, and even the makeup, like his face is all kind of pocked up and messed up, and even going back to the Dark Horse comics and the color palette of that, and the bleakness of the story, and it being an identity piece. I mean, there were a lot of things. It is the same character, and it is a certain thing, but it's its own thing. It's its own story. And even the psychological dynamics of that particular story were what appealed to me. Like the psychological dynamic of, the paradox of this father who, while shaving Hellboy's horns, wants him to be himself. And that he himself struggles with this idea that he has base impulses, genetics that make him want to bring about the apocalypse, whatever that means, destroy, basically, kill, And then he consciously decides to become the man that he is and by doing that, cuts off an essential piece of himself. All those things, thematics-wise, are beautiful to me, and it was just sort of a beautiful story to tell. And then the trappings around it are the production and the monsters and the action and all that stuff was just really exciting to me too. So it seemed like an opportunity to make a really fun movie with some really cool resonant thematics.
I guess I'm curious as to how you get in there, though, how you get into that character, because if I'm not mistaken, you're a method actor.
Whatever that means.
I don't really know what it means.
I don't think anybody does anymore. It's been wildly misinterpreted throughout the ages. All it really means, because I think the common misperception is that you live the exactly, and I don't actually consider he has his own method, but it's not what the American method in Strasbourg laid out. It's the American method in Strasbourg is more based on a personal dynamic and character. So you're bringing your personal life and becoming a creative artist to make this character alive.
So how do you then apply that method? I can understand what you're saying when it comes to playing a professor or like a sheriff or something like that. But when you have to portray a half human, half demon, how does that apply to this role?
Well, there's still going to be tons of things in it that I want to be personalized. Like, for example, and you can go kind of as deep down the rabbit hole as you want to go, right? Like, so he's a half demon who was spawned by Nazi occultists, right? So like this would be like my method process, sort of how I went about it in the beginning. So the first thing I take from that is he's adopted. He's an adopted kid. He was taken in by a British, investigator, right? But in that way, he's an adopted kid. And I, to sort of figure out what the dynamics are of an adopted kid. And then, and the other thing is, English isn't his first language. It's his second language. His first language is demonic, we must assume, right? Which he actually loses the ability to speak. At least in our film, he doesn't really know what Anung Rama is. So he loses his native language in speaking English. He's an adopted kid. He himself is a monster, and he goes about hunting monsters for a living. So all these sort of psychodynamics, you start to explore. And for me, it becomes, some of it's in your actor's brain or your intellectual process goes on these tangents, and then you kind of fill those with personal life. But like one of the tangents I was really interested in was like his voice. So like he's someone who, he has demonic vocal cords. He's got a big frame, much bigger than me. He learns English. How does he learn English? He doesn't learn it from his dad. We don't get our accents from our parents. If you're British, if your parents are British but you grew up in America, you get your accent from your American friends. You always get your accent from your peers and from your idols, and usually that's not your parents. So I figured that he grew up maybe idolizing people like Lobster Johnson, or even idolizing like films in the 50s of like, or even earlier of like Bogart in a trench coat solving crimes.
This noir sort of detective.
Right. And wanting to be accepted and wanting to be looked at well, and because he's hated by society. I mean, he's Frankenstein. He shows up and people show up with pitchforks and torches, right? So he wants to be a force
even when he saves their lives. They
Exactly.
show up with pitchforks and torches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just because they see him and they associate him as a monster. Yeah. So, he's looking for symbols to make him the good guy, and one is the trench coat or something. So he takes on these sort of things, and he learns language in this certain way, and then so we reach a point with him where he's struggling to self-identify even further, but he has this relationship with his father that's really strong, and in certain ways is good and loving, but also in certain ways he lives in the shadow of his father. He is a hell boy, and like
perpetually a hell boy.
Yeah, and so I mean, hopefully this movie in its core is some sort of identity piece around like becoming, a hell man, but not like the mayonnaise brand, but like
spoiler, he turns into a tub of mayonnaise.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to me that you root him, again, this comic book character, this fantastical character, that it's important to you that you root him in a humanity and a striving to be better that I think we all can relate to.
Yeah, I think, and there are these things that are kind of comic or archetypal concepts that I find useful to ground. Like there's a concept in the comic book of destiny, right? And to me, like whenever people say destiny, I feel like it's so froofy. Like I don't even know what that means. Like destiny, like that. So you're destined to do that. So just don't do it.
Right.
But like to me, the modern equivalent of that is like genetics or like predispositions. So like, trying to take these big archetype concepts and make them something personal that I myself can identify with and relate to, so that when I play a scene, it's my blood's responding to something as opposed to just an idea in my head.
Right. I think it's time to hear a little bit more of the film. I've got a clip of you as Hellboy talking to Professor Brown, your father figure on Earth.
Do you recall the Osiris Club?
Oh, yeah, strip joint in Jersey.
The other one, the British Occult Society, formed in 1866 by the ranking members of the Heliopic Brotherhood of Ra.
Ra? I met Ra once in the underworld. He was a close talker.
Well, like us, they fight against the forces of darkness, and our organizations have a long-standing relationship. They're old friends of mine, and they've requested your assistance with a giant problem.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Giants.
David Harbour, that's you as Hellboy about to beat up some giants. And like, yeah, he's a tough guy. And Hellboy is normally portrayed as someone with a lot of bravado. But in your how do I put this? And how you portray him, your portrayal of him is the word I was looking for. Good word to have
good.
in this line of work, hey? You show him struggling with his masculinity a little bit and like what it means to be a good man. Why did you make those choices?
It's something where, as I say, like exploring these ideas, things just start to come alive. And I guess that's an interesting thing that you perceive it as struggling with his masculinity. How do you see that?
I guess struggling with the fact that he can do anything physical, but doesn't necessarily want to. I think he does want to be a good human. He wants to be a gentle person. He doesn't want to have to do these things. And I think that's
I mean, and in that way, I think that one of the things we do in this movie, and it's a bit of a liberty, is like his masculinity or his sexuality is linked to evil. Like,
right.
So he's attracted to the Blood Queen. He's and that to me was again part of this destiny thing, is that there actually is a physical component to it. Like there's something like if he were to be a good guy, he'd actually have to cut off a piece of himself that is, that he experiences pleasure. So to a certain degree, he'll be a good guy for other people, but he actually does make a sacrifice where he won't experience pleasure that much. So it is interesting that you view it as masculinity because, like his masculinity or his whole sort of being is tied up in violence, and so I think he doesn't know how to once the beast comes out. I mean, it destroys the world. So I think he's always sort of tempering that.
How did you find the physical transformation for this role?
It was dramatic. I mean, it's that body is a suit. The whole thing is like a prosthetic.
Like head to toe?
Yeah, I mean, my legs are mine, but they're covered, and my left hand is mine.
Okay.
It's painted, but the whole rest of the thing is a prosthetic body. Underneath it, I did a lot of training, and I was very big and strong because I wanted to feel that testosterone flow. I wanted to feel that like anger that I think comes from heavy weightlifting, and I wanted to feel the strength and power for the stunts. But it was like being a rhinoceros. I mean, it's like you're in a different body. So I found it really challenging. And, you have these comic books too, and I wanted to preserve some of the look of the comic. So you have these body positions that he has, like when he gets angry or confused, like his lower jaw kind of juts out, and his body arches in certain ways, and I wanted to preserve some of that. So in a way, it was like working from the outside in, like you're like kind of doing ballet. Like you have these positions that you want to hit, and then you have to fill it with all this color underneath it.
The reason I bring this up is A, because it's interesting, but also because I know in the past you've been asked a lot, for better or for worse, we'll call it, like about the dad bod thing, that you were seen as this very sexy dad bod dude, which for fellow dudes who are cut like a bag of milk like I am, everything is pretty good.
All right.
But I know when I was reading your comments about that, you were saying that, like I'm not always about people having to transform their bodies and starve themselves and work out unnecessarily for roles. I think there should be roles for people who look like me. And I wonder if you found it challenging or an incongruency to have to do this work for this role.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, it is a suit, and there was some misperception, like online. I think so much stuff gets thrown around that people thought it was me, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And but it's an interesting sort of social experiment, because I do find that like people are fascinated by this. Look, I think there's a certain thing in terms of body transformations that's interesting just in terms of actors' commitments. Like you look at a guy like Christian Bale, who goes so crazy with like this skinniness and The Machinist, and then like big and fat for Dick Cheney or whatever. And like that commitment is kind of extraordinary. But there also is like a sort of fetish in society where it's like just about people getting ripped and like it's all like, and I think it's kind of an unrealistic and kind of annoying fantasy waste of time. Like in general, your body's going to be your body. There's ways to get healthier and stuff, but to maintain like that amount of, I mean, even those fitness pictures that you see, or like
on Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah, like they stop drinking water and stuff like that for the particular picture. And I know like actors do that as well for particular scenes. And I'm a little tired of that. Like I think it's I don't think it's very valuable for us as a society. Like, I don't mean to be a prude about it, but like, you know, like there's certain things that aren't valuable that I do too, where I'll smoke in Stranger Things or whatever, smoke cigarettes. That's not a particularly valuable thing for society.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But to me, it's vital for the
cigarettes.
But it's very vital for me for the character.
Yeah.
But in terms of these,
I'd rather do that than The Machinist, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. But these like, you know, these big like kind of this fetishization of the body, I feel like has gone so far now. And I was very gratified when Stranger Things came around and people were like, oh, you can like be a normal guy and be sexy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'd like more of that in society, because I think that you know, first of all, the amount of time and money and dedication and personal chefs and everything that it requires to have those bodies is like, you know, it's crazy.
Well, it sets up, I mean, I think about this an awful lot, is that, yeah, if you want to look like, I don't know, Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, have $5 million budget from the studio to give you no disrespect to Chris Pratt, by the way, but
it's
to have a
its own
trainer,
thing.
to cook you eggs, to cook you cod, to cook you all these things.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Those guys travel with personal chefs
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I mean, and to me, it discounts a little bit. I've always wondered, you know, maybe it's my resistance because I'm not built that way. I'm not so athletic, but I've always felt that acting was bigger than an amateur bodybuilding contest, and sometimes that's what I feel. I feel like people are like, you know, it's all about the physical bodybuild, and I'm like, there are bodybuilders out there. You can go, like, acting should be hopefully people bringing something more special and interesting. But
I love talking to you about the craft of acting, because I can tell you take it like incredibly seriously. Is this something you've always wanted to do? Like, were you born wanting to be an actor?
I think so. I mean, I did my first play at 5 years old. I played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. I was apparently extraordinary, according to my mom.
Oh, that's nice of her.
There's no video.
Well, check this out.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Here it is. It's in the
okay, and then, you know, it started out as kind of just being like a ham bone. Like, I like being in front of people. I liked entertaining people. I liked... and then it changed. Like around high school, it became almost vital to my worldview. Like I didn't understand, you know, every teenager goes through, I think, 13 or 14, right? You just go through a rebellious phase, right? Where you just get, and for me, I just got kind of angry and weird and didn't understand the society around me, which was kind of an upper middle class, you know, society of business people, doctors, lawyers, and I was like, not going to have any part of it. And I started to really get into the dynamics of people, and I started to see that I felt like people had something. I felt like I discovered subtext, where I felt like people were saying, I love you, or this is my best friend. And all I saw was like anger or jealousy or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. And whenever I would bring it up, people thought I was like a total bummer. But when I would do it, then I found acting, and I could reveal these things through a character. And people were like, that's amazing. Like, that is what people do. They identify because it's not specifically about them.
You could reveal this maybe cynicism or this.
Yeah, or whatever it was that you saw about, like, you know, what it was to be a human being, which I think is a wildly confusing thing to be many times.
Full of inconsistencies,
Yes, and paradoxes. I mean, the fundamental paradox of, like, the fact that we both know eventually that we're going to die.
Yeah.
and yet we're going to sit down and have an interview
about a movie. I saw some of the other day.
But like, what else are we going to do?
I know what to do.
I mean, eat a bag of potato chips, ketchup potato
We're going to
chips?
do that too. But I'd rather do this than a lot of things, though, to be honest. For God's sake,
me
the way to
too,
spend your life.
me too.
I saw a guy the other day, a stand-up comic, say, who here believes they're going to, when they die, they're going to go to heaven? And a couple of people clapped, and everyone went, oh, and he said, I know you're looking down on those people, but doesn't that make as much sense as this?
Absolutely.
It
absolutely does. It absolutely does.
This also doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you then, I want to go back to this. So like, I think one thing we can tell, even if people don't know you too well in this conversation, is that you take the craft incredibly seriously. We talked about what method means. And again, you're not living in the coast of Ireland making wooden shoes all day, but you do. But I'm always curious as to when you're done. Like when you're done the role and you go home, is it ever hard to ground yourself back in who you really are?
Yeah. Because you're playing with kind of powerful energies, and you get better. I mean, those energy at dealing with those particular dynamics, you get better. It's not so much losing yourself in the role, because actually, in terms of the way that I approach method, I actually don't think the character really exists. A character exists, but it's all me personally dealing with personal things. It's like
so you don't lose your. I become Hellboy.
I can lose myself in my own personal experiences, and in my own experiences with another human being. But the idea that like Hellboy exists in your mind. It's me sort of using aspects of him, it's like technical elements, and then also personalizing things. But I can have personal emotions or thoughts or feelings that are very big, and I can take those with me when I go home. Yeah. And that's, it can be difficult, but also it's, again, it's like, what else am I going to do? Like, I really like, it's my favorite thing to do is to explore what it means to be a human being. And so when I'm doing that, even if it means I'm sleepless some nights or whatever, it's all sort of part of the game.
Social media is something a lot of artists avoid. And I think about this because when you just said that, I'm exploring what it means to be a human being, I don't fully lose myself, but Hellboy exists in your mind. I don't want to get all incense and peppermints here, but in many ways, David Harbour exists in my mind.
That's correct.
And like who you are, a guy I'm talking to right now, you're already different than I thought you were going to be. And not in any bad way, but like, I don't know, you make a guess.
Yeah.
Right.
No, of course.
And then even now you're different than who you really are.
That's correct.
So I wonder how you find even just being performative as David Harbour with fans, including on social media.
Yeah, and I go back and forth. I mean, I've actually somewhat kind of stepped away from it recently. Because I had a real, I have many different, the funny thing is like, who are we? Identity is a crazy question, right? Like, who are we anyway? Like,
I think we can figure it out today. Crack open those chips, bud.
All right, let's do this.
Yeah.
We got about, there is certainly, what I considered social media kind of in the beginning was like a cocktail party. It's like you go to a super fun cocktail party where people have these pithy comments, these little opinions, and we all are making jokes and looking at people from across the room and going like, I love what you do. And they're like, I love what you do. It's this
That's
lovely little thing. And then the cocktail party starts to get weird. And then I actually recently, as you say, like, and maybe it's new self-definition or whatever it is, I've had to sort of step away because, I believe in nuance. I believe in complicated opinions. I think that one of the problems is not people's opinions nowadays, but the fact that people are so opinionated or value opinions in general. I think opinions, like I see, sort of pundit shows, and everybody's got all these opinions. And to me, the solutions are like, I would love to see like a CNN. We might do it today. I would love to see a CNN show where it's like somebody brings up something really complicated, and people just think about it for like 10 minutes.
It's just a lot of this, like,
just like, yeah, maybe no. It doesn't make for good TV, and it doesn't make for funny, pithy comments on social media either.
No.
But I have found that, it's hard to maintain an identity on social media that's always fun, opinionated, quick, strong, identifying with one thing or the other, and I've had to sort of step away a little bit and write longer form things, which I feel like contain paradox, contradiction, even because I'm full of contradictions.
The way I love that you use social media is that you use it in a really kind of giving way, and I want to show you an example of that. So take a look at that.
Yeah.
So for people listening to the radio, like what are we looking at right now?
This is some high school photos of me and a student. I get all these weird, funny fan Twitter things at David Harbour, and they'll be like, and some of them are like, will you take my senior photos with me? And they're all like kind of jokes no one expects. But this girl, I was like, if you get a certain amount of retweets, yes, I will take them. And like the internet just loved that. Thought it would be really fun to humiliate me. Because I said, if I do take them, I have to wear the school sweatshirt and carry a trombone.
All right.
Because I played trombone in high school.
I played euphonium.
Terribly.
Yeah.
Oh, you played euphonium? I played euphonium on what's the piece with all the planets? The planets. Gustav Holst, the planets.
Jupiter?
And the one, Jupiter. I played euphonium on that.
Me too. I also played that chart.
I was awful. I'm sure you were much better.
No,
But anyway,
I blew it a bunch of times.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, now I feel
Great
safe.
tune though, really high note.
Yeah, beautiful.
Anyway, okay.
So anyway, I said I would take it, but she got all the retweets like in a heartbeat.
Right.
And then I went and we set up this like fake studio. We took high school photos together, one of which I do believe she used as her senior photo, which is ridiculous. I told her she didn't have to, but it's really fun. I mean, my favorite thing to do is to drop in, because the politics, even the causes thing, it all gets a little nuanced. I feel like everything requires so much nuance, but something like that where it's like, oh, I can just like make some kid's day.
You officiated weddings.
I officiated a wedding.
For a fan?
For a fan, yes.
But I feel like seriously, I feel like you get something out of this that you don't get from a selfie on the side of the road in Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, much more. Because I got to tell you, there's something and I was just in India. My friend was telling me he was driving around Bombay and he got lost in a taxi, and they asked this guy, and the guy was like, you go down here, and they were like, what? And he's like, let me just show you. And he gets in the car with them. They drive like a half hour out of the whole thing. The guy gets out of the car. They're like, we'll drive you back. And he's like, no, forget it. Like, you ruined my whole day. But there was a real joy in him. And that, to me, is the essence of these things. It's like, I don't actually really want to do something that's so easy. Like, I want to do something that's going to annoy me. It's going to take like at least a couple days out of my life of like planning or like whatever. And that, to me, brings me a lot more joy than the selfie on the street. Yeah.
How have you found, I mean, you have entered into a world as an actor that requires a deep fandom, I think with Stranger Things and now with Hellboy. Science fiction fandom.
Yeah.
If that's what we want to call it.
It's its own thing.
It's its own thing. How are you finding it? Like, how are you finding people dressing up as you for Halloween and things like that?
I mean, in general, I find it like very entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
It can be a bit possessive sometimes, and they can be a bit rabid too. But in general, like almost, I'd say 90% of the time, maybe even 95% of the time, I find it just to be like a joyous thing. And I think that's just because I myself am still kind of a nerd about all that stuff, but
you were a nerd in.
Oh God, yeah.
We both played euphonium, didn't we?
Well, there you go. The popular kids aren't playing euphonium in the band. You know what I mean? They were, at least when I was growing up in the '80s, they were on the saxophone,
trumpet.
Trumpet. Sure, a good
percussion.
trumpet. But that nerd on the euphonium over there, look at him. That shifty nerd. But I like love that stuff as a kid too. So it's so, and I still do too. And so I understand that feeling of like how effective it is and how touching it is to be sort of seen and understood.
That's interesting because like now you're in Hellboy, it's another whole level. because you're entering
Yeah.
entering a canon, like an existing canon.
Yes, that's true.
So, but if it must be meaningful to you, because I bet that, I don't know, were you a Star Wars guy?
Oh yeah.
Like I bet that
Yeah.
Mark, like Luke Skywalker meant something to you that you are now going to mean to people.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a whole other, as you say, it's a whole other thing, because with Hopper, there's just a pure thing of this being an entirely new thing. Now with Hellboy, there is this thing of like me taking a mantle from Ron Perlman, who's terrific and beloved. And
He played Hellboy in the Guillermo del Toro.
exactly,
Yeah, right.
in the older movies. And so, it's a whole new thing of like people are very protective over the character. Some people are very protective. Other people are eager for something new, and it's all it's all part of it. I guess it's all just me taking what I do as seriously as I can and understanding that kind of obligation. It's like, yes, I get it. Like I feel the same way, and like I complain or get excited about, like when Heath Ledger's Joker came out, I think that I was like over the moon, even though I loved Jack Nicholson and I loved even Cesar Romero, to be honest, with the old
in the original TV show. Yeah.
And then when I saw Heath Ledger do it, I was just like, oh my God, And then there are other things where I'm protective and I'm,
Jar Jar Binks comes out. And
yeah,
maybe
I want to ruining the thing.
Dear internet. Yeah.
So I get it. Like I get all of it. But again, like, I just take it very seriously because I love the genre as well. So I just want to bring as much life to it as I can.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, man.